Hi, everybody. I want to take just a couple minutes with you, so thanks for joining me, to share a story with you, a story that I have used several times because it had a profound effect on me. And I'm going to share it with you in hopes that you might understand some of the lessons that I learned, and you might learn them vicariously, not have to learn them yourself. So I was mentoring one of my favorite classes to mentor. And the kids are a little bit older, 15, 16 usually in this class. And it was a very small class. It was in our first few years of Commonwealth. And I had a young lady in that class who is absolutely amazing. You would love her. And it's true. I fall in love with most of my students and I think they're all amazing, but this one in particular, fantastic, fantastic young lady. And she was getting really frustrated with the class. She wasn't getting a lot of work done, and she was really frustrated with that. And in our mentor meetings, and I believe wholeheartedly at that age as a mentor, a classroom mentor, in having those mentor meetings with them. So we were having mentor meetings, I think about once a week. It could have been every other week at that point, but she came to me and she said, I don't know what's going on. I am so frustrated. I am working so hard. I am putting all this time in. Every chance I get, I'm studying, and I'm not getting anything done. And I thought, I know she has that perception, but I agree with her. She's not getting anything done. And I knew there was something going on. And so we sat down and we talked about it a little bit. And I'll be honest with you, I was pretty sure that I knew what the problem was. But me telling her what the answer was and what the problem was would not have actually solved the problem long term. There were two problems. One was that I needed her to discover on her own what this roadblock was that she was hitting so that she could solve her own problems. But the other problem was that her problem was directly related to her parent. As a mentor, it is a huge no-no for you to be telling students that their parents are wrong. We are there as their mentor to be a second witness to their parent, not to tear down their parents, but to support their parents and build them up. Always, always, always. And so I had this was part of my creed as a mentor, was to never talk ill of their parents and never put their parents in a bad light. And not to mention the fact that this particular parent was a very, very close friend of mine who I adored, who this particular struggle that I figured that the two of them were probably having was something that could have been me as much as it was her, because we're very similar in personalities still. And it wasn't something that I wanted to point out as a problem. So I got together with my co-mentor and I said, what are we going to do? We really need these kids, these youth, to see what is holding them back. And it wasn't just her. The others were struggling in some similar areas, but it was most profound in her. So what we decided to do was to have them track their study hours and have them come in every week with a number that they had tracked and give us the number. And they would actually get a reward for every time that they gave us a number that was the same or higher than what they had done the week before. Actually, I think it was just higher. We were also asking them to free write every week. And we gave them a goal to come in with the number that was the same or higher for the free writes. That's where that came from. And if they increased in their free writes or hit 5 times a week, they would get this small reward. Not usually something you're going for with these older youth. Usually that's something you would do with the younger kids. But these families were fairly new to what we were doing with TJ Ed and hadn't had the experience early on to build on to get to this point. So it was very appropriate. And we needed to motivate them to do this. This was really going to be important. We were very, very sure that it was going to make a huge difference for them. So they were free writing every day. And tracking that, and then they were supposed to be tracking their study hours. So whenever they were studying, they would like clock in, and then they could clock back out again when they stopped, and they could clock back in and track those throughout the day. So I actually have the piece of paper. I'm not really going to show it to you because it has names on it, but I still have this, and this was from a long time ago. This was probably about 10 years ago that we did this. So I have the numbers right here, and the gal that I was mentoring with one-on-one that I just told you, her frustration and her struggle. Her name was Crystal, and her mom's name was Lynn, and of course those are not real names. I made those up, but we're going with it. So Crystal, the first week she came back, she had 2 free writes, which was great. We needed to get them writing and just thinking on paper and making that happen. And her study hours came to 4 hours and 30 minutes. 4 hours and 30 minutes for the whole week, not for just the day, okay? And I looked at that, and she looked at that, and she was really frustrated. So we kind of went over, okay, are you tracking everything that you can track? Like, is it all being put in there? And she's like, yeah, I think so. And I said, okay, what are you finding out? I don't know. I'm just really frustrated. So one of the other students came in with a 9 hours and 30 minutes too. So still not very much. You can see that these students did not yet understand how to put in the time into their studies. But I'm just going to go with Crystal's for right now. Okay, so Crystal, first week, 4 hours and 30 minutes. The second week, she came back 5 hours and 1 minute for the whole week. The third week, she came back and she'd made it up to 7 hours. And I'm telling you, the frustration when we talked about this after classes was, it was real, and it was gripping, and it was killing her. The next week, she comes into class, and we have mentor meetings after class. She comes into class and she's super excited. Guess what? I have to tell you. I'm like, okay, can you wait until afterwards, because we have to start class because we only have so much time and we're packing all this stuff in. Okay, yeah. So like she's like sitting on her hands, right? Because she was so excited. So we get into the mentor meeting. She said, I know what's wrong. I know exactly what's going on. She said, I am planning out my day, and I'm figuring it all out. And my mom told me that we would have devotional at 9 o'clock in the morning, every morning. So I have a space on my schedule for 9 o'clock in the morning, devotional. And it's not happening at 9 o'clock. So I'm sitting around waiting for it to happen. And it doesn't happen until 11:30 or until 12 o'clock. And then when it does happen, it takes a really, really long time. And so by the time I come back, I'm frustrated because I'm so far behind. And then it's like afternoon. And so it's time to like go pick up my brother from karate and take my sister to swim lessons and run to the grocery store for my mom and do all these errands, because she was the only one in the family who had a driver's license, and she could help that way, right? So she was being asked to do a lot of stuff extra at home, and she was really helping out and being her core phase was super strong. She knew how to be a member, a part of this family, this team, and she was a great team member of this family. But she wasn't studying because she was so busy being a team member, and because she didn't have a schedule that worked for her. So I said, okay, what are you going to do about it? And of course, I had all these ideas. I knew she could do A, or she could do B, or she could do C, or, all these things that could happen, and she'd have this conversation, and this is what she could tell her mom, and I could have told her the whole thing. But that wasn't my place. Again, she needed to solve her own problem. So I listened. She said, well, I think I need to talk to my mom about this. And I said, okay, what's the conversation going to look like? And she came up with some ideas and some things to say, and she kind of practiced a little bit on me, and I sent her off. And I waited until the next week. And the next week she came in and she had 21 hours. And that was the first one, 21 hours and 43 minutes. The next time she had 21 hours, and it went up to 29 hours. I'm reading this off this paper. And she had 6 free writes this week. And she was super excited, but she said, wait, I'm having a problem. My mom and we had this great talk, and actually I think the talk was before the 21 hours. It was at the 7-hour point. So she hit the 21 after she had the conversation. She had the conversation with her mom. They had a great talk, and her mom said, look, I can't really guarantee you that I can have devotional at 9 o'clock. It is a super big weakness of mine, which I totally understand. Timing is not my strength. My kids have seen that same failure in me. But she said, I can't guarantee that it will start at 9 o'clock, but what I can do is I can tell you that after a certain amount of time, you can leave, and I'll keep the younger kids with me, but you don't have to stay through the whole devotional. So I'll make sure that I get the really important stuff in, like the scripture reading and that core stuff right at the very beginning, and then you can go ahead and go. And so that was when she came back, and she was like 21 hours, and then she had the 29 hours. And then she said, she came into me and she said, well, I'm still struggling. I'm still having a problem getting things done, but I think I have it kind of figured out. Can I talk it through with you? And I said, yeah, absolutely. So we talked it through, and basically what she came up with was that schedule of hers where she was scheduling it pretty much like public school. 8 o'clock, I'm going to do this. 9 o'clock, I'm going to do this. 10 o'clock, I'm going to do this, et cetera, was still being interrupted by her mom's schedule and by the needs that her mother had. So I said, okay, well, I know that you want to continue to support your mom, and that's really important. So how can you do both? And so she came up with a great plan, and her plan was to prioritize her list instead of scheduling her list. So instead of saying, I'm going to work on this from 9 to 10, and then have devotional start at 9:30, and then come back an hour later, and she's already missed half of that first thing and half of the second thing, and it's almost time to start the third, but she didn't do the first two things, and getting really frustrated over that schedule. Instead of that, she was able to say, okay, when I sit down at my desk, I'm going to spend this amount of time on my first priority. And here it is. Here's that first priority. And she was getting things done. So let me just tell you what her numbers look like, okay, over that semester, because they're really, really cool. Okay, so she, like I said, she started at 4 hours and 30 minutes, and then 5 hours and 1 minute. And that increased to 7 hours. And then she took that leap to 21 hours and 43 minutes. And then she got to 29 hours and 5 minutes. And then she stayed at that 29 hours. And then the next time, jumped up to 53 hours and 15 minutes. And then I got 61 hours out of her, and it was 61 and a half hours. And then, let's see, she went back down to 37 hours and 20 minutes because I think there was something that went on that week. But look at the power of her figuring it out on her own and having the desire, because her free rates went way up too. They went 2, 3, and then 5, and then 6, and then 5, and then 6. And then I've got 16 written in here. I don't know how I ended up with that. That must be some kind of weird thing I was doing that day. And then back to 5, and then 9, and then 9 again. So she was also finding a love of writing through this process, because we were only asking them to do it once a day for 5 days out of the week. But instead, and we asked them to write the date in pen. People ask me this all the time, like, okay, so how did they show it to you? So I wasn't reading their free writes, but I was reading the dates that they had written in pen. So they couldn't change the dates or anything like that. I was holding their feet to the fire and keeping them accountable. But they just blossomed, and she just grew and was turning in these amazing papers and reading these great books, and we were having great discussions together because she solved her problem, and that empowered her to continue to work harder and do more. So I just want to share with you a couple of lessons out of that. One, let them solve their own problems. Just be there to help facilitate that process, but don't give them the answers, okay? But being there is the most important part of having a mentor meeting with a student. Number 2, don't ever, ever, ever say anything or even imply anything against the parent. Because A, that parent is probably one of your best friends, and B, that parent you could hurt the relationship and damage the relationship between the child and the parent, but also your kids might end up with that parent as their mentor later. And so you want to make sure and preserve that the things that you're saying and the way your heart feels is gentle and forgiving and loving and kind and supportive towards that other parent. Always, okay? The other thing is that it is super important for these kids to understand what is keeping them from putting in the hours that make the Thomas Jefferson Education work. That is what they need to know. They need to know how to make this happen. And so tracking them, giving them a physical way to hold themselves accountable is the way to help them figure out what the problem is and help them identify it. Also, I'm a strong believer in free writes and teaching these kids how to write through the process of free writing. So it really did increase what they were capable of. Okay, so thank you so much for spending that time with me. I appreciate it, and I love being able to share, and I'm eager to hear from others and what they have to share with me as well. It's great when we can learn in this collaborative process. And everybody, have a great day. Take care. Bye-bye.